"Meet my pregnant mistress," he told 200 guests, while his disabled wife watched. Then their 10-year-old son played a video on his tablet and changed everything. Before we continue, consider my humble request to like and subscribe, as it's completely free. The Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom fell silent as Sophia Walker sat in her wheelchair, her fingers digging into the armrests until her knuckles turned white. Her husband Daniel stood on the stage, bathed in golden light, his arm wrapped possessively around his pregnant mistress. 200 faces turned toward Sophia, eyes wide with shock and that terrible, familiar pity. "I'd like to introduce you all to Rebecca," Daniel announced, his voice echoing through the deathly quiet room. "Not just as our company's new creative director, but as the mother of my child, and the future I've always dreamed of." The words sliced through Sophia like shards of glass, the same glass that had shattered her spine and career 3 years ago. Daniel looked directly at her, his expression a perfectly calculated mixture of regret and relief. "Sometimes life gives us a second chance at happiness," he continued, raising his champagne glass while Sophia's world collapsed around her. But then, something unexpected happened. Deep within Sophia, something long dormant flickered to life. Her trembling lips curved into a smile, not of acceptance but of awakening, and that smile, filled with quiet determination, sent a visible chill down Daniel's spine. 3 years earlier, Sophia and Daniel Walker were the golden couple of the design world. Their modern home overlooking the city perfectly reflected their success. He was the charismatic marketing executive who made deals happen. She was the brilliant interior designer whose innovations won awards and transformed spaces. They complemented each other perfectly. "They were unstoppable together," recalled Lisa, Sophia's former colleague. "Daniel knew how to sell Sophia's vision, and Sophia knew how to make Daniel's promises reality." Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday in November. The accident at the Riverside Hotel development should have been impossible. Safety protocols were Sophia's obsession, yet somehow a glass installation collapsed while she was inspecting the ballroom of their newest project. "The fall shattered her spine," explained Dr. Chen, the neurologist who treated Sophia. "We initially weren't sure if she would walk again." After 3 surgeries and months of painful rehabilitation, Sophia could manage short distances with walking aids, but remained dependent on a wheelchair for daily life. Her once busy schedule of site visits and design meetings shrank to physical therapy appointments and doctor visits. And Daniel, the man who had vowed to stand by her side in sickness and in health, began a subtle but unmistakable withdrawal. To the outside world, Daniel Walker remained the devoted husband. He hired the best specialists, renovated their home for accessibility, and spoke movingly at charity galas about their journey. "My wife has shown incredible courage," he would say, his hand resting protectively on Sophia's shoulder. "Her resilience inspires me every day." But behind closed doors, a different reality was emerging, one of cold silences, missed dinners, and growing resentment. The Walker Design Group's annual showcase was in full swing, crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the city's elite. Sophia sat near the edge of the grand ballroom, her wheelchair positioned at a table partially hidden behind a large floral arrangement. From her vantage point, she could observe her husband commanding the room. At 42, he remained strikingly handsome, his salt and pepper hair and tailored suit giving him the distinguished air of success. He moved effortlessly between groups, each laugh and handshake cementing business relationships worth millions. "He certainly knows how to work a room," remarked an older woman who had joined Sophia at her table. "Your husband has the hotel developer eating out of his hand." Sophia smiled politely. Daniel's always been good with people. What she didn't say was how she had begun measuring the distance between them, not just the physical space across the ballroom, but the growing emotional chasm that had opened since her accident. Later that night, as their driver helped Sophia into their modified SUV, Daniel checked his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "Harrison wants to meet for breakfast before the board presentation," he said, not looking up. "I'll have Agnes bring your breakfast tray in the morning." "I could come to the presentation," Sophia suggested. "It is our company." Daniel's smile was thin. "It's just financials. Terribly boring. Better you rest for your therapy session." At home, their modern mansion had been retrofitted with ramps and elevators after Sophia's accident. What was once their showpiece of innovative design now felt to Sophia like an elaborate cage. Daniel helped her into the elevator with practiced efficiency, supportive but distant, like a nurse with a patient. That night, Sophia lay awake staring at the ceiling. Their bedroom, like their marriage, had been redesigned after her accident. Her adjustable hospital-grade bed, positioned for accessibility, separated from Daniel's premium mattress by a discreet but unbridgeable gap. The next morning, Sophia woke to an empty house. Daniel had left early for his meeting with Harrison, leaving a handwritten note propped against the coffee pot. "Breakfast in fridge. Agnes comes at 10 o'clock. Remember your pills." Sophia crumpled the note, irritated by its presumptive tone. She made her own coffee, stronger than the weak brew Agnes prepared, and wheeled herself to Daniel's home office. Since her accident, Sophia had gradually been excluded from the daily operations of their company. Her design license remained active, but her concepts were increasingly modified by the firm's growing team with Daniel's approval. She was about to leave when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry, but you deserve to know the truth about your husband." Sophia stared at the message, her heart racing. Attached was a photo that would change everything. Daniel, his arm wrapped intimately around a beautiful younger woman with a visibly pregnant belly, exiting what appeared to be a private medical clinic. The photograph burned in Sophia's mind as she waited for Daniel to return home. The pregnant woman's face was unfamiliar, but the look of tenderness on Daniel's face was one Sophia hadn't seen directed at her in years. When Daniel finally arrived that evening, Sophia had composed herself, the phone with the damning photograph tucked into her wheelchair pocket. "How was the board presentation?" she asked casually as he loosened his tie. "Successful. We secured the funding for the Riverside expansion." Daniel poured himself a scotch, not offering Sophia one as he once would have. "How was therapy?" "Enlightening," Sophia replied. "Daniel, who is Rebecca?" The question hung in the air. Daniel's hand paused mid-sip, the only indication that the name meant anything to him. "Rebecca Lane," he said smoothly after a beat. "Our new project manager for Riverside. Why do you ask?" Sophia held his gaze. "Is there something you want to tell me about your relationship with her?" Daniel set down his glass with careful precision. "She's a talented professional I'm mentoring. Sophia, what is this about?" Without a word, Sophia took out her phone and showed him the photograph. Daniel's expression hardened, but he didn't appear particularly shocked. "You're having me followed now." His voice was cold. "Someone sent this to me. I don't know who." Daniel's laugh was humorless. "And you immediately jumped to the worst conclusion. That's your problem, Sophia. You've become so bitter." "She's pregnant, Daniel." "Yes, she is, and her husband is very excited about it." Daniel's lie was delivered with practiced conviction. "I was accompanying her to her appointment because she felt faint at the office. As her mentor, I was concerned." Sophia wanted to believe him. Part of her, the part that remembered the man who had once adored her, desperately needed his explanation to be true. "Her husband?" Sophia repeated quietly. "Greg Lane, works for Meridian Construction. You met him at the Christmas party." Victor's details were specific, convincing. "Is that really what you think of me, Sophia? That I would be carrying on with a married pregnant woman?" Put that way, it sounded absurd. Sophia felt doubt creeping in. The person who sent this. Who sent it? Daniel interrupted, suddenly alert. I don't know. It was anonymous. Daniel nodded knowingly. Sounds like someone trying to cause trouble, probably jealous of our success. He checked his watch. Now I need to review some contracts before dinner. As Daniel left the room, Sophia felt a familiar disorientation, the sensation that perhaps she was the unreasonable one, seeing problems where none existed. It was a feeling that had grown increasingly common since her accident. But something about Daniel's too-perfect explanation nagged at her. That night, she lay awake long after Daniel had fallen asleep, her mind returning to small inconsistencies in his behavior over recent months. The next morning, Sophia made a decision. If Daniel was telling the truth, there was nothing to worry about. But if he wasn't... Agnes, she called to their housekeeper, I'd like to do some online shopping this afternoon. Could you help me set up my laptop in Daniel's office? The light is better there. Once alone in Daniel's office, Sophia moved quickly. First, she positioned a small wireless camera she had ordered weeks ago for security purposes, hiding it among the books on Daniel's shelf. Then she began searching through his desk drawers. Most contained ordinary business documents, but in the back of the bottom drawer, she found a small key she didn't recognize. Pocketing it, she continued her search until Agnes called her for lunch. Over the next week, Sophia established a new routine. Each day while Daniel was at work, she reviewed the footage from the hidden camera, searching for anything unusual. Most evenings, Daniel spent a few hours in his office, reviewing documents or making calls. Nothing suspicious. Then came Tuesday night. Daniel entered his office at his usual time but locked the door, something he rarely did. Sophia watched the live feed on her tablet as he made a call, his voice too low to hear clearly, but his expression was unmistakably intimate, his smile private. After the call, Daniel unlocked his desk with the small key Sophia had discovered, the same drawer that had appeared empty during her search. He removed what looked like a small black book and made several notes before returning it and relocking the drawer. The next day, while Daniel was at a construction site, Sophia used the key she had found. The black book was a separate ledger documenting transfers to offshore accounts, not mentioned in any of their joint financial statements. Large sums, hundreds of thousands of dollars, moving to numbered accounts in the Cayman Islands. More disturbing were the notes in the margins. R. Apartment deposit. R. Car. R. Medical. Sophia photographed every page before returning the book exactly as she had found it. That same afternoon, she called Lisa, her former colleague from their early days at Walker Design. Sophia, it's been ages. Lisa sounded genuinely pleased to hear from her. How are you doing? Managing, Sophia replied. Lisa, I need to ask you something confidentially. Do you know anything about a project manager named Rebecca Lane? A pause. Rebecca? Young, stunning, always dressed impeccably. About 30. That sounds right. She's been at Walker for about a year now. Rising star. Lisa hesitated. Sophia, there's been talk about Daniel. He seems particularly invested in her career. Late meetings, private lunches. The office gossip machine works overtime whenever they're together. Lisa sighed. I didn't want to say anything without evidence, after everything you've been through. Sophia's suspicions crystallized into certainty. Thank you for being honest. One more thing. Is she married to someone named Greg Lane? Lisa's laugh confirmed what Sophia already knew. Rebecca? No, she's definitely single. Makes a point of mentioning it, actually. After ending the call, Sophia felt a strange calm descend. The pain of confirmation was mixed with validation. She wasn't imagining things or being paranoid. That evening, she watched Daniel more carefully, noting how he checked his phone whenever it buzzed, the slight smile when reading certain messages. After dinner, he announced another business trip for the following week. 3 days in Seattle for the McKinley project, he said casually. How interesting, Sophia replied, keeping her voice neutral. I thought the McKinley presentation wasn't until next month. Daniel barely hesitated. They moved up the timeline. These developers are always impatient. Another lie. Sophia had seen an email on Daniel's computer screen just that morning, confirming the McKinley presentation for its original date. After Daniel retired to his office, Sophia wheeled herself to the guest room and opened her laptop. It was time to be methodical. She created a secure document and began listing everything she knew for certain. Daniel was lying about Rebecca's marital status. He was transferring large sums of money to undisclosed accounts. Some of these funds appeared to be supporting Rebecca. He was lying about his travel schedule. She needed more evidence, but her instincts told her this was just the beginning. The Daniel she had married would never have betrayed her this way. When had he changed? Or had he always been capable of this deception, and she had simply been too in love to see it? The next morning, Sophia called Jennifer, her physical therapist. "I need a favor," she said without preamble. "Something outside your professional duties." "I'm intrigued," Jennifer replied, "and concerned." Sophia hesitated, then decided complete honesty was necessary. "I need you to help me follow my husband. I believe he's having an affair." A silence then. "I'll pick you up at 7. Wear dark clothes." That night, Jennifer drove them to an upscale restaurant in her modest Honda, parking where they could see the entrance. Sure enough, at 8:15, Daniel arrived, not in his usual Tesla, but in an Uber. 10 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up, and Rebecca emerged, her pregnancy now unmistakable even beneath her elegant coat. Sophia watched through binoculars as Daniel greeted Rebecca with a kiss that was decidedly not mentorship, his hand lingering on her pregnant belly with obvious pride. "I've seen enough," Sophia said quietly. Jennifer squeezed her hand. "What now?" "Now I find out how deep this goes." Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia built her case methodically. She discovered credit card statements showing jewelry purchases from Tiffany that she had never received. She found reservations for a weekend getaway in Napa during Daniel's supposed Seattle trip. Most disturbingly, she uncovered documents for a luxury condominium purchased in Daniel's name alone, not listed among their marital assets. Then came the most painful discovery of all. While searching Daniel's home office for more financial records, Sophia found a small velvet box hidden beneath a false bottom in his desk drawer. Inside was not jewelry, but a sonogram image labeled Baby Walker 24 weeks, with Rebecca's name clearly printed at the top. Sophia was staring at the image, tears blurring her vision, when she heard Daniel's voice behind her. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She turned to find him in the doorway, his expression a combination of rage and panic. "Finding the truth," she replied, holding up the sonogram. "Your mentee is carrying your child." Daniel's face hardened. "You had no right to go through my things." "No right. I'm your wife. That sonogram should have been our baby." "This is exactly why I kept it from you," Daniel snapped. "Look at you, emotional, hysterical. You're not stable enough to handle the truth." "Not stable?" Sophia was incredulous. "You're having an affair, moving money offshore, buying property I know nothing about, and I'm not stable." Daniel stepped closer, his voice lowering to a dangerous calm. "Sophia, you haven't been well since the accident. The doctors warned me about potential psychological effects from your trauma and medications, paranoia, delusions of persecution." "Don't you dare," Sophia whispered. "Don't you dare try to make this about my mental health." But Daniel continued, his tone shifting to concern so convincing it was almost believable. "I've been worried about you for months. These conspiracy theories, the hidden cameras. Yes, I found it," he added, seeing her surprise. "Sophia, you need help." "What I need is a divorce lawyer," she replied. Something flashed in Daniel's eyes. Calculation, not pain. "If that's what you think is best. But I should warn you, any judge will take your mental state into consideration when dividing assets. especially given how unpredictable you've been since the accident. The threat was implicit but clear. Challenge me, and I'll make you look unstable. After Daniel left, Sophia sat shaking in her wheelchair, the sonogram still clutched in her hand. She had expected anger, perhaps even relief at being discovered, but this calculated gaslighting was something far more sinister. That night, Sophia overheard Daniel on the phone in his office, the door not quite closed. She found the sonogram. He was saying quietly, "No, don't worry. I've been documenting her erratic behavior for months. My lawyer says we have options. Yes, a psychological evaluation would be the first step. Of course, I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of." Sophia wheeled herself silently back to her room, cold realization washing over her. Daniel wasn't just planning to leave her, he was laying groundwork to potentially have her declared mentally incompetent. The implications were staggering: control of her medical decisions, her finances, her very freedom. For the first time since discovering Daniel's betrayal, genuine fear gripped her. This was no longer just about infidelity, it was about survival. The next morning, Sophia woke with a clear head and a decision. If Daniel wanted war, she would need to be strategic about her response. Acting emotionally would only play into his narrative about her mental instability. She began with her medications. For months, she had accepted without question the pills Daniel provided each morning and evening, a combination of pain management, muscle relaxants, and sleep aids prescribed by various specialists. "Jennifer," she asked during their next therapy session, "would you look at something for me?" She showed Jennifer the collection of pill bottles from her bathroom cabinet. Jennifer examined each one carefully, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Sophia, how long have you been taking this combination?" "About 8 months. Why?" Jennifer pointed to 2 of the bottles. This muscle relaxant at this dosage would make anyone foggy and disoriented. And this one isn't typically prescribed for your type of injury anymore. It's known to cause memory issues and confusion in long-term use. A cold feeling settled in Sophia's stomach. "Daniel manages my medication schedule. He says it's too complicated for me to track while I'm on them." Jennifer's face hardened. "I think it's time you see a different neurologist, one you choose yourself." Dr. Sarah Reynolds, a neurologist recommended by Jennifer, reviewed Sophia's medical history with growing concern. "Mrs. Walker, several of these medications are contraindicated for your condition, and the dosages are unusually high." She looked up from her tablet. "Who has been overseeing your prescription regimen?" "My primary physician, Dr. Harris. He works closely with my husband." Dr. Reynolds frowned. "I see multiple prescriptions from different specialists, but limited consultation between them." She hesitated. "With your permission, I'd like to run some blood work and develop a more appropriate treatment plan." The test results confirmed Dr. Reynolds' suspicions. Sophia's blood showed higher levels of certain medications than prescribed, suggesting someone had been increasing her dosages without medical authorization. This combination would cause fatigue, confusion, and memory issues, Dr. Reynolds explained gently. "It may have even been hindering your physical recovery." With the doctor's guidance, Sophia began carefully tapering off the unnecessary medications. The process was uncomfortable, but within 2 weeks, she noticed significant differences. Her mind felt sharper, her energy improved, and most tellingly, her physical therapy sessions showed measurable progress. "You've advanced more in the past 10 days than in the previous 3 months, Jennifer noted during a particularly successful session. Meanwhile, Sophia continued building her case against Daniel, now with a clearer mind and renewed purpose. She hired a private investigator recommended by Dr. Reynolds, who had unfortunately seen similar cases of medical manipulation in her practice. The investigator, Rachel Martinez, was efficient and discreet. Within days, she provided Sophia with a comprehensive timeline of Daniel's relationship with Rebecca Lane, including evidence they had been involved for over 16 months, predating Sophia's accident. They met at a design conference in Chicago, Rachel explained, showing Sophia photographs from the event. According to my sources, she was hired at Walker Design less than a month later. Sophia stared at the images of Daniel and Rebecca at a hotel bar, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. The timestamp showed February of last year, 3 months before her accident. There's something else you should know, Rachel continued, hesitation in her voice. I looked into the inspection records for the site where your accident occurred. The glass installation that collapsed had been flagged for reinforcement the previous week. The work order was signed off as completed, but there's no record of the actual repairs being done. Sophia frowned. That happens sometimes on busy sites. Documentation gets ahead of the actual work. True, Rachel agreed, but the signature on the completion form, it belongs to Daniel Walker. Sophia's blood ran cold. Are you suggesting Daniel knew the installation was unsafe when I visited the site? Rachel chose her words carefully. I'm saying the timing is concerning. The accident happened 3 weeks after Miss Lane was hired, on a site that Daniel had personally signed off as safe, despite documented structural concerns. The implication was almost too monstrous to contemplate. Sophia had always assumed her fall was a tragic accident. The idea that Daniel might have knowingly allowed her to use unsafe equipment was unthinkable. Yet as she reviewed the evidence Rachel had gathered, disturbing patterns emerged. After her accident, Daniel had taken control of her medical care with surprising efficiency. He had insisted on specific doctors, managed all her medications, and gradually isolated her from colleagues and friends. It's too much for you right now, he would say whenever she mentioned visiting the office or attending industry events. Focus on your recovery. Sophia reached out to Lisa again, this time with more specific questions about her attempted return to work 6 months after the accident. I always thought it was strange, Lisa admitted. You were scheduled to come back part-time, your office was ready, and then suddenly Daniel announced you'd had a setback and needed more time. I don't remember any setback, Sophia said slowly. Daniel told me the accessibility accommodations weren't ready yet. Lisa's silence spoke volumes. Sophia, the accommodations were completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I oversaw them myself. The picture becoming clearer was deeply disturbing. Daniel hadn't just been unfaithful, he had been systematically undermining Sophia's recovery and independence, while creating a narrative of her being too disabled and mentally unstable to function professionally. With Jennifer's help, Sophia connected with a rehabilitation specialist who designed an intensive therapy program away from Daniel's watchful eye. 3 times a week, while Daniel believed she was attending art therapy sessions supposedly supervised by a therapist who was actually Jennifer's cousin, Sophia was actually working to rebuild her strength and mobility. Progress was slow but steady. As the unnecessary medications left her system, Sophia found she could stand for longer periods and even take several steps with just a cane, achievements Daniel had repeatedly told her were unlikely given her condition. Armed with this knowledge, Sophia contacted Michael Reyes, an attorney specializing in elder abuse and financial fraud. Though she wasn't elderly, Michael explained that many of the same legal protections applied to disabled individuals being exploited by caregivers or family members. What you're describing is a textbook case of medical gaslighting and financial exploitation, Michael explained during their confidential meeting. The medication manipulation alone is potentially criminal. I need to be careful, Sophia explained. Daniel has significant resources and connections, and he's been documenting my supposed mental instability to use against me. Michael nodded grimly. Then we document everything and prepare for the right moment. Most importantly, we ensure your physical safety, while we build the case. Safety had become a genuine concern as Sophia reduced her medication and became more clear-headed. Daniel's behavior grew increasingly controlling. He installed a security system, that sent him alerts when exterior doors opened. He began checking her pill bottles to ensure she was compliant with her medication regimen, forcing Sophia to develop elaborate systems to maintain her deception. Through Rachel's investigation, Sophia discovered something even more alarming. Daniel had consulted with a lawyer specializing in conservatorships for mentally incapacitated adults. "He's laying groundwork to take legal control of your affairs," Michael warned when Sophia shared this information. "We need to accelerate our timeline." Sophia agreed, but insisted they be thorough. "I want him exposed completely, not just the affair, but everything. The financial fraud, the medical manipulation, and possibly his role in my accident." The final piece fell into place when Rachel located Marcus Jones, a former security guard from the site where Sophia's accident occurred. Initially reluctant to speak, Marcus finally agreed to meet Sophia at Michael's office. "I wasn't supposed to be there that day," Marcus explained nervously. "I switched shifts with another guard. That's why he came to me afterward." "He?" Sophia prompted. "Your husband. 2 days after your accident, he asked me to delete specific footage from the security server." Marcus couldn't meet Sophia's eyes. "He said it showed you in a private moment, upset, crying, and he wanted to protect your dignity. Offered me $5,000 cash." "Did you delete it?" Michael asked. Marcus nodded. "But I'm not completely stupid. I made a copy first. Insurance, you know. Never thought I'd need it." The footage, stored on an old flash drive Marcus had kept hidden, was grainy but clear enough. It showed Daniel on the construction site early on the morning of Sophia's accident, examining the glass installation. The timestamp was 6:42 a.m., almost 3 hours before Sophia's scheduled inspection. More damning was the second clip from the same morning. Daniel speaking with the site foreman, pointing to the installation, then handing him an envelope. The foreman nodded, pocketed the envelope, and walked away. No work was done on the installation. Sophia watched the footage in horrified silence. While it wasn't definitive proof that Daniel had intentionally caused her accident, it clearly showed he knew the installation was unsafe and did nothing to prevent her from using it. "This crosses into potential criminal territory," Michael said quietly. "Negligence at minimum, attempted manslaughter at worst." Sophia felt strangely calm as the final pieces aligned. "We need copies of everything. Secure copies Daniel can't access or destroy." As they developed their strategy, Sophia learned from Lisa that Daniel was planning the company's annual showcase, traditionally held at a design center, at their home instead. "He says it's to make it easier for you to attend," Lisa explained, doubt evident in her voice. Sophia immediately recognized the opportunity this presented. "When exactly is this happening?" "This Saturday." Daniel's being very hands-on with the planning. Through careful observation and strategic questions, Sophia discovered the true purpose of hosting the showcase at their home. Daniel planned to announce Rebecca as both his new business partner and publicly introduce her as the mother of his child, effectively declaring his new future while Sophia was present. "It's breathtakingly cruel," Jennifer said when Sophia shared this discovery, "to humiliate you in your own home in front of colleagues and friends." Sophia's smile was tight. "Actually, it's perfect. He's creating exactly the stage I need." The day of the showcase arrived with perfect weather, showing their modernist glass home to its best advantage. Professional decorators had transformed the main floor into an elegant venue with floral arrangements, subtle lighting, and a small stage area where Daniel would deliver his announcements. Sophia spent the morning in careful preparation. She selected a midnight blue gown she had worn to a charity event 3 years earlier, the last major function she had attended before her accident. Daniel had always said it was his favorite, though he raised an eyebrow when she requested Agnes help her into it. "Are you sure that's appropriate?" he asked, glancing at her wheelchair. "I want to wear something that reminds everyone of who I was, "Who I am," Sophia replied with a serene smile. "Don't worry, Agnes modified it perfectly." By 6 o'clock, staff were making final preparations. Sophia positioned herself in the salon adjoining the main reception area, where she could observe without being immediately visible to arriving guests. Daniel was in his element, moving confidently through the space, directing caterers and checking lighting. He wore a new tuxedo that Sophia had never seen, another small betrayal added to the mountain of larger ones. "Are we confirmed for 8:30? She overheard him asking his assistant. "Yes, Mr. Walker. The car is picking up Miss Lane at 8:15. All board members and key investors have confirmed attendance." Daniel nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "Perfect. Make sure Sophia's wheelchair is positioned near the back once guests arrive, visible enough for appearance's sake, but not centrally located." The casual cruelty of his instruction confirmed what Sophia already knew. Tonight was designed to sideline her, while Daniel claimed his new future. Guests began arriving at 7. Sophia watched as Daniel greeted each one warmly, playing the role of successful businessman and devoted husband. When he eventually wheeled her out to join the reception, his hand rested possessively on her shoulder as he guided her through carefully scripted interactions. "Sophia has been so looking forward to seeing everyone," he would say, patting her hand. "Haven't you, dear?" Sophia played her part perfectly, present but subdued, smiling appreciatively as colleagues told her how well she looked. As Daniel had instructed, staff positioned her wheelchair in a corner of the main room, partially obscured by a large floral arrangement. By 8:30, the showcase was in full swing. Nearly 200 guests filled their home. Board members, investors, and prominent members of the design community. At precisely 8:40, a sleek black car pulled up outside. Sophia watched through the window as Daniel stepped out to personally greet Rebecca, resplendent in a form-fitting gold gown that accentuated her pregnant belly. The room subtly quieted as they entered, guests noticing the pregnant newcomer and the proprietary way Daniel guided her through the crowd. At 9 o'clock, Daniel clinked his glass for attention, moving to the small stage area. "Friends, colleagues, esteemed partners," he began, his voice carrying confidently across the hushed room. "Thank you for joining us in our home for this special evening." Sophia noted his deliberate use of "our home," maintaining the facade even as he prepared to dismantle it publicly. "Tonight I'm excited to share our newest vision, one that will transform not just our skylines, but our company itself." The screen behind him shifted to renderings of an ambitious new development. "The pinnacle represents our future," Daniel declared, expertly building enthusiasm. "A future that embraces innovation, sustainability, and new leadership." He gestured toward Rebecca, inviting her to join him on stage. "It's my pleasure to introduce Rebecca Lane, who joins Walker Design as our new creative director and my partner in bringing the pinnacle to life." Daniel placed his arm around Rebecca's waist, his smile broadening. "But tonight is about more than business announcements," he continued, his voice softening. "It's about honesty and new beginnings." The room grew uncomfortably quiet as guests sensed what was coming. "Life takes unexpected turns," Daniel said, looking directly at Sophia for the first time that evening. "Sometimes it brings challenges that change our path entirely, and sometimes when we least expect it, we're offered a second chance at happiness." With theatrical timing, Daniel took Rebecca's hand and placed it over her pregnant belly. "Rebecca and I are expecting a child together, a son who represents the future I've always dreamed of." The room erupted in confused reactions, gasps, muttered conversations, and uncomfortable shuffling. All eyes turned to Sophia, expectantly waiting for the breakdown Daniel had anticipated. Instead, Sophia smiled and began slowly wheeling herself toward the stage. "Sophia," Daniel said, warning in his voice as she approached, "I'd like to say something if I may." Sophia interrupted. her voice clear and strong. Daniel's face flickered with uncertainty, but refusing her would appear callous in front of so many witnesses. "Of course," he said tightly, offering her the microphone with obvious reluctance. Sophia positioned her wheelchair center stage between Daniel and Rebecca. "First, I want to congratulate Daniel and Rebecca. A child is always a blessing." Rebecca flushed, looking uncomfortably at Daniel, who maintained a rigid smile. "What many of you don't know is that Daniel has been systematically undermining my recovery while building his new life." With practiced precision, Sophia activated the remote control hidden in her hand. The screen behind them switched from the pinnacle renderings to medical records, financial documents, and finally, the security footage showing Daniel at the accident site. As gasps filled the room, Sophia engaged the brake on her wheelchair, placed her hands on the armrests, and slowly, deliberately stood up. A collective gasp filled the room as she rose to her full height, steadied herself, and took a single step forward, then another. Reaching into the small bag attached to her wheelchair, she removed a folding cane and extended it. "Thanks to proper medical care and intensive physical therapy, I've regained significantly more function than Daniel wanted anyone to know was possible." Daniel's face contorted with rage and disbelief. "This is a performance," he sputtered. The front door opened to admit several individuals in suits, representatives from law enforcement who had been waiting for Sophia's signal. 1 year later, Sophia Walker stood at the podium of the Design Excellence Awards, supported by her cane but standing independently. The audience applauded not just for her innovative, accessible design project, but for her remarkable journey. Her Walker Wright Accessibility Foundation, funded by assets recovered from Daniel's fraud, was transforming public spaces across the country. Daniel, meanwhile, faced years in prison for financial crimes and medical manipulation. As Sophia returned to her table, her 10-year-old son, Ethan, beamed up at her with pride. She had filed for divorce within days of the showcase confrontation, but the surprise discovery of her early pregnancy, somehow missed by doctors focused on her injuries, had given her unexpected joy amidst the chaos. "Ready to go home, Mom?" Ethan asked, offering his small hand. "Yes," Sophia smiled, taking his hand. "Home sounds perfect." For now, that was enough. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of love to break down walls and bridge any divide. Please do comment your feedback and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of family, redemption, and the triumph of love over pride. Remember, it's never too late to change your story.